So, Stuart Smith is our first speaker, Dr. Stuart Smith. Stuart was in the audience in Barcelona 5 years ago when we developed and voted through the Barcelona Principles. He's subsequently become one of the leading thinkers in global public relations and was promoted global CEO of Ogilvy PR this year. It's a pleasure to invite Stuart to lead off our 2015 summit. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Barry. There's nothing quite more daunting than doing a pitch, but there is one more thing that's more daunting than doing a pitch, and that is sitting in front of an audience of people who basically tell us whether or not we did our job for our clients. So just bear with me a little bit. When Barry asked me to do this, I got very, very excited. And I got very excited as he told you, I've got a scientific background. And I've always had a particular thing about how we use data as an industry, how we use data as an industry to come up with a creative idea, how we use data as an industry to look at how the campaign is working in real time, and how we use data to work out whether we delivered value for money. So I love data, and I'll come on and talk a bit about that later. But why do we measure? I think we didn't develop, but lots of other people did develop thousands of years ago, mathematics and units in order to work out the relationship between things, whether that was the relationship between the surface area of a sphere and its radius, or whether or not to tell us that actually the Earth was flat. And knowing that the Earth was flat was quite useful to people like shipbuilders, to sailors that were on those ships, and lots of other people. So basically, I like the idea that we can work out the relationship between two things. But what drove those people was curiosity. And one of the things that I talked about 5 years ago at the Barcelona meeting was the fact that I don't think we're curious enough as an industry. And I suppose part of what I want to talk about is we are 5 years on, and what really has changed. Now, I don't know your industry as well as I would like to. I know my industry quite well, so what I'm going to do is try and give you a perspective from sitting within a PR company that's sitting within an integrated marketing environment, and just give you a sense of what's happening and what conversations are happening. So I have a couple of questions. Who thinks that PR companies are more interested in why what they do works than they were 5 years ago? Who thinks they are less or about the same as 5 years ago? Okay, so we're a little bit more interested. Who is working more with marketing now than they were 5 years ago? And keep your hands up if that's all social and digital. Okay, that makes me feel that your industry is changing, our industry is changing, and I get a sense that actually there's a lot of work that we're doing similarly. We are all moving towards marketing. Now, I do love data, as I talked about. But I don't think we are a very data literate organisation, industry in general. I happen to be a scientist within PR, and that is a slight anomaly. But I was talking earlier to one of the speakers, and I said it's quite interesting how data is used in meetings. And I remember as a scientist, there were these things called error bars. And I've never seen error bars, and I've seen quite interesting use of data that worries me. And I think we do need to be more literate. This chap is a fairly Republican right-wing economist. And I think what he's saying about the fact that you can torture data, we can suck a lot of information and meaning out of data. But as a scientist, I do see data tortured and abused on a daily basis. I do think we have to recognise that there is an art and a science, but we do need more science in what we do. So 5 years later, what has really changed? I would say that the PR industry has not changed enough. That's my point of view. It may not be the point of view of everyone in the room, particularly David from Ketchum, but I don't think we have changed enough as an industry. And this is something that I showed 5 years ago, which comes from Jennifer Scott, who now runs our New York office, that there is some sort of collective failure amongst the PR industry to really be interested and curious in why what we do works. And this sort of explains the second half of my title. On the one hand, we need to be curious, but on the other hand, I think we are failing to be curious. And I think as an industry, we have been half pregnant with this problem for a long time. So how is the industry changing? I moved to Ogilvy 4 years ago when Chris Graves tapped me on the shoulder and said, would you like to move to Ogilvy? And I said yes, but the question is why? And I think part of the reason about why is that the industry is changing. I could see the silos collapsing. I could see social and digital moving our industry. I could see a whole range of things happening. And I looked at Ogilvy and I thought, this is a fantastic place. This is going to be a place where I can experiment. This is a place to be safe when all the silos are collapsing. This is a place where we have lots of disciplines together doing various things. It's a great laboratory, I think, for integrated work in a much more social, digitally creative, integrated world that we live in. So there's no better place to be. I don't know how many people have read this book. It's actually really quite an old book. And it's a story about these mice that find a rich store of cheese. And they go to it every day and they take some cheese and they come back, and they go to it every day and they take some cheese and they come back. And then one day, a couple of months later, the cheese is gone. And I suppose that sort of does remind me a little bit about what is going on in our industry. So it's not that our industry is not growing. It is growing. I think PR is growing by about 7 to 8%. But actually, it is changing a lot. The kind of places where we're getting money, the things that we're doing are changing massively. And we're growing and adapting, as you are growing and adapting as well. The biggest change for me, and the biggest change for the whole of, I think, the PR industry, is working with the CMO, which is hence my question earlier. I've probably worked with more CMOs in the last 8 months than I have in the previous 8 years. And this comes to the heart of what I want to talk about, which is how these people are driving change in our industry and why they're driving that change. They're driving that change because they've fallen in love with earned media. They fall in love with earned media and they see it as a magic ingredient to drive campaigns. Now, there's a lot of conflicting opinion out in the world around the sort of the effectiveness of various disciplines, whether that's advertising, direct marketing, PR, the whole sort of mix. But there's no doubt that it is changing, and there's no doubt that CMOs are moving money into away from media and into earned media experiments. And what are those people saying to us? What they're saying is, we want to drive earned media, but it must be aligned with the brand, it must be aligned with our sales goals. We'll move money from paid for the right ideas. They're telling us they want to expand with experiments with creative content, social media, and we want a newsroom. Now, just as a side thing, it's quite interesting how many newsrooms that brands have that don't actually produce any news. They actually produce content to a news model, but that's a completely different thing. Now, why is that happening? We know all the reasons why it's happening. The eyeballs are moving, content is the new back, campaigns are designed for social, but they've never, ever been more interested in this world that we inhabit. They're not only more interested, they've also got a lot of money. As a CMO, they control very large chunks of money. And the PR industry is basically designed to work to that 20% of the marketing budget. But what we're seeing is, I suppose, an industry which is separating out into two. There are those PR agencies that are trying to continue to work with a traditional PR base, but are also moving to work with marketing. That doesn't require us to change what we do at its heart, but it does require us to work in different languages and to adopt different styles and different techniques. But one thing is absolutely certain. When we start working with marketing, measurement and data becomes a lot more important, partly because marketing spends more money on what it does in terms of measurement and looking at campaign effectiveness. Now, the good news is that earned media is obviously our home turf. We can help brands and companies navigate this new world, and it is our home advantage. As British Airways said at the 2012 Olympics, we can help them navigate this new world. The really, really bad news for people like me and other people that lead PR agencies, is that every agency, no matter what discipline they currently purport to deliver, are all trying to do the same thing. So as this world expands, the competition is intensifying. And I think one of the things that really worried me most, I think there's a piece of data from the PRCA in the UK a couple of years ago that said that they surveyed some PR clients, and don't ask me what the error limits were on this particular piece of research, but something like 50% of PR companies would go, PR clients would actually consider going to a non-PR agency for PR services. And that was a real wake up for me. When I saw that little bit of data, I thought, you know what? That is what I'm seeing. We're seeing a lot of competition. So I think there is a tipping point happening for all of us, but there is also a particular tipping point for the measurement industry. It's not an accident that if you look at WPP's numbers, Martin Sorrell has got a lot of money in measurement, as I think he sees that as a big bet. I see that as a big bet, and I think that not just Ogilvy, but the whole industry, PR industry, needs to get a lot smarter around measurement. David Ogilvy put it this way: I think we have to get very busy trying to work out why what we do works, and I'll come on a bit more to that later. So how's it changing? I'm just going to give you a few examples. They're very live examples just from within Ogilvy, so apologies to any other agency representatives in the room. This is the Vodafone campaign that we're working on with JWT out of the UK, but it's a global campaign. It was a really interesting signal that marketing moved money out of an F1 sponsorship into the First campaign platform. And actually what the First campaign platform, for those of you that don't know about it, is a series of different experiences and activations. So this particular one is actually out of the Netherlands, I believe. It's a fantastic film if you want to go on and look at it online. But essentially it takes a couple of grandmothers from this country who've never flown, and they take them through an experience to help them get ready to fly to see relatives that they haven't seen for many, many years. It's a wonderful, heartwarming, emotional piece of work. So we are now working a lot with marketing, as marketing moves money from advertising and big sponsorships into particular activations that will drive earned media. So that's one thing. We're making adverts. So there's a piece of work that we've done in Lebanon that I'm not going to play for you now because it's too short. But we're doing work for a breast cancer charity in Lebanon. And one of their pieces of insights was that actually men are not playing a role reminding women to go and take a mammogram. So they took that insight and they started working on a creative idea. And they've done a fantastic film, which actually has been entered to Cannes. Fantastic film, but it was a PR idea at the centre with content created and actually an advert. Now, the PR agency in Lebanon did not actually film the ad and direct it, but they storyboarded it. And I think that's an interesting change to our industry, which is that we are rediscovering our creative ambition. So what we're doing is changing, and therefore if what we're doing is changing, what we need to measure is also going to change. But we are still doing, let me go back one. This is Rory Sutherland. He is a fantastic chap who is at Ogilvy UK, but one of the things that he's most known for is talking about neuroscience and behaviour change. And I think that links really nicely to measurement, because we talk about the measurement hierarchy. Marketing is moving towards wanting to really look at behaviour changing in a lot more detail. I'm sure you've read articles about how neuroscience principles will change how we message and how we do the industry. I think you'll also see brands wanting to change behaviour. I was struck, I don't know if Miguel is already in the audience, but I was struck by companies like Unilever with their campaign on hand washing in India. It's not about promoting soap, it's actually about promoting social good. And social good that creates behaviour change has got to be a good thing for brands to do. Brands have a huge amount of power. They have power because they are trusted, they have power because they have a lot of money. And I think you will see more and more and more of brands wanting to change behaviour, not just to buy and to choose, but to actually help change behaviour. That requires different measurement, and it requires lots more thought about outcomes. But we still do PR. I am just in the middle of judging. I've just finished my judging, the first round of my judging at Cannes. I've just seen 700 films. And I will say one thing, which I don't think breaks the rules. I'm actually quite appalled by the way in which the measurement is actually shown in the case studies. I think there are 3 or 4 different categories of measurement that you are allowed to choose. You are meant to put down 2 types of measurement minimum for a particular entry. And actually, if we take this as a measure of how seriously the marketing communications industry, the PR industry is taking measurement, I'd say about 60% of entries got that right, which tells me there's a long way to go. So I'm going to whip through this a little bit. Marion is already in the audience, and I know Marion McDonald from our Asia Pacific region is going to be doing a lot of, there's Marion, is going to be doing a lot of work with you later in a session. So I'm not going to dawdle too much on something that she's already going to talk about, but I will say one thing. Outputs, impact, outcomes. The outcome stuff is much better. We all know it. We all know it's a lot better. One of the most important things, I think, is it makes life easier. I would rather go into a meeting with a client and say, I got you sales, than I got you some coverage. It's a much easier conversation to have with a client, particularly a CMO client. Someone told me the other day that brand metrics were as good as sales data, and I think that is true up to a point. So I think things that move the brand are important, but ultimately, if a CMO is going to be only living by brand metrics alone, I don't think it's enough. They need to prove to their CEO, and we need to prove to them that they have shifted behavior, that they have sold things, that they have moved things. And I don't think, as a PR industry, we are used to really thinking like that. I have some porn for you. This is some measurement porn. Here's a B2B case study. I mean, I'm just going to show it to you because I just like the way the story evolves. I know that you know this, and I know that I know this, but not enough of the industry know this. If we go and do the output stuff, that looks fine. It looks a bit better with the impact stuff around reputation and sort of brand metrics, but it looks so much easier. It's a much easier story to tell as an industry if we can prove this. And if you can help me prove that stuff more often with more clients on more brands and more work, my life is going to be a little bit easier. This is another example that I like. It's really simple. This is great, 8 million views of a social video. But again, having looked at 700 of those entries at Cannes, I can tell you, I sort of ended up thinking, well, so what? I mean, that was a great video. It was a fantastic film, but what did it actually do? Now, I'm sure it did something, but no one was curious enough to work out why. One of the things about the CMO, I think, is that, we've been dealing with PR budgets being quite small for many years. And there was that lovely campaign that PR Week ran to get 10% of the budget put against measurement at one point. We constantly live in this world where there are small budgets, and we would rather take a leap of faith and put money into more money into activation than into measurement. But with CMOs, they've got a lot more money, and they really do care about data, and they will do research. So we have to get much, much smarter around that. This is an interesting case study. Imagine an airline who has asked the PR agency to do a lot more work around social and content for the 2012 Olympics. We need 10 extra people to do social and content on our Facebook page during the 2012 Olympics. And that agency does all of that work. And afterwards thinks that, well, that's going to come and it's going to go and we won't be doing any more of that work afterwards. But imagine if the client comes back to them and says, you know what, that was really good content. You got better shares, you got better sort of social outcomes than anything that we have had before, and we'd like you to do more of it. Now, this is marketing speaking to the PR agency, and the PR agency says, yes, that's fantastic. We would love to do that. And how much do you want to give us? Lots of money. And we said, that's great. Sorry, that is we. But yes, anyway, we said, great. And marketing said, but we have to know what the sales data is. We have to know how many bums on seats we got. And we said, oh, actually, we're a PR agency. We're not very comfortable with that. And they said, fear not, we will help you because we are marketing, we understand data. We can take what you're doing and we'll work with a couple of other of our agencies in the ecosystem and we will allow you to follow the electrons all the way through from somebody does social content, the $50 piece of content you put up, and we will be able to tell you how many bums on seats that you get. We've been doing that work, and I tell you, it was refreshing, it was liberating, it was relieving to work with a client where you knew to the minute exactly what ROI you were producing, because they would come to us and say, we've got to put 50 seats on a plane to Malaga, and within a week, and we would do some stuff, and we would see whether or not we sold 50 seats to Malaga. It was fantastic. I'll skip over a couple of these because I'm going to run out of time. What are we doing about this? The joy of being within Ogilvy is that I've got within touch, within reach, some amazing people like Todd Cullen. So part of my agenda as a fairly newly minted CEO is to try and really drive this within Ogilvy and try and get as interested and curious in data as anyone else is in marketing. This is the call to action. ROI. I have to understand the money that we're spending on behalf of our clients is working. I know that you are here to help, but I do hope that AMEC can actually help us, and maybe through my newly minted CEO, maybe we can partner more closely. But there you go. That was my view of the world according to Stuart Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Stuart, just remain with us at this stage. People at the back, there's lots of room over here. Please come down. Okay. Lots of talking points in there. One of them, Stuart said, this is a tipping point. I wonder whether there's a question in that. Thoughts on Barcelona, and did enough happen 5 years on? Who's got the first question for Stuart, please?
Thank you. My name's Mark Weiner, and you had in one of your slides a pie chart that showed that PR was getting 20% of the marketing spend. I wanted to know where that number came from, or whether that was just illustrative.
It's a rule of thumb, and it probably overestimates how much money, to be quite honest. But it's something that I'm using internally and externally just to sort of make the point that actually, from a commercial point of view, as CMOs move money into earned media, what I'm worried about is a backlash. We're seeing a lot of growth in PR because money is moving from media. But within about a year and a half, I think CMOs are basically going to turn around and say, you know, I gave you that $5 million from the media budget. I mean, I barely noticed it when I gave it to you, but what happened to it? Could you just remind me? So I'm worried about what happens in 18 months' time.
Thank you.
The next question is at the back. Please.
Hi. I'm from another PR agency. We actually work together, Stuart.
Sorry. Apologies for anything I might have said that upset you.
Why
Please let us know who you are and
Simon
what that
Hackett
PR agency is. We're intrigued.
I'm Simon Hackett from Pegasus. I worked with Stuart many years ago.
Okay.
As someone from another PR agency, why have we only just reached the tipping point now? I've been hearing talk like this for years. So, yeah, why now, and what can the measurement industry do to make our job easier?
I think for anyone that's done technology sort of PR, you know about the Gartner sort of curve. You know, everyone gets very excited about something, it gets completely overhyped, and then we all get really bored by it, and then it sort of falls into sort of daily use. I think that everyone's been talking about it because it's been true for a long time, but it is when the money starts to move. And I think the reason why over the last couple of years we've seen, on average, 10% growth in the PR industry is not because our traditional clients are suddenly spending 10% more. They're not. It's marketing that's spending the more money. So I apologise, but it's sort of the same answer. As the money starts to move, suddenly it all gets a bit more serious. And I really am worried about that tipping point. So I think we have basically 12 to 18 months to make sure that we have, you know, whether we are a PR agency working in an integrated team or whether we are a PR agency working on our own, we have to put the onus on us. Just because the client doesn't ask for the data, we should know that it is better to make sure that we can measure what we do. I just think that otherwise the PR industry will separate out into two, And there'll be those that get media money and those that can prove measurement, and there are those that choose not to go down that route. These will be two perfectly valid business models for a PR agency, but they will be very different.
So, Stuart, a question from me. How can AMEC and members here help in making measurement matter to the PR industry?
Maybe it needs a campaign. I mean, there is a PR campaign, a very, very expensive PR campaign, Barry.
At pro bono rates, Stuart.
I'll do it for you because you're a mate. Even though I'm a scientist, I don't know your industry and the detail of what you do now. I mean, I see some of the data and analytics stuff that's happening, and I'm starting to think, you know what, this whole thing about me having a PhD is starting to wear a bit thin. I really am a bit behind the times. I would commit, and I will commit to take Ogilvy PR on a journey. I don't know whether it's going to be a 1-year journey, a 2-year journey, or a 3-year journey, but Marion and I have discussed it. I took the opportunity to do this speech because I wanted it to force me to really think about what I wanted to do. Right. So any help that I can get from AMEC would be fantastic. But the one controversial thing is, you know, is there a golden piece of measurement? Is there some industry standard that we can create that would help the CMO? Okay,
it's great to hear that view. Jeremy Thompson, our chairman, is smiling on the front row because we've got a big set-piece session tomorrow, which is aimed at moving on from your ambition. So I'm hoping for good things out of that session tomorrow.
No. Well, I look forward to hearing more about it.
Anyone from AMEC want to comment on that? Jeremy?
Jeremy Thompson, AMEC in Gorkana. I just wanted to say, I mean, I've judged awards in the last couple of years where I've been on a panel because I've been there to press about measurement and the inclusion of it in award submissions. And the last ones that I looked at, I think out of 10 entries, I think 2 of the 10 provided any sort of form of meaningful measurement. And when I kept pressing the subject, eventually I was told to pipe down, and that actually this was, you know, lots of just good creative work. Did it really matter? So I think we've got a long way to go, and I think all of I'd really welcome the advice and recommendations from all the PR groups here in ensuring that whatever we work up in the next couple of days in the form of metrics and standards and so on, that we make sure that we promote those to the industry and that we find a way to make them stick. So I think we should commit to ensuring that by the time we leave here, we've got some concrete actions supported by you guys. So I think if you can think of those things that can help us, let's agree on what those things are before we go.
I think that would be fantastic. I just think it makes our life easier. And to be honest, the commercial model, the commercial imperative is there. As the industry shifts, if we get measurement, it shouldn't be a question of sort of piping down. I think those PR agencies will float off to this side, and they won't be working with CMOs because they won't be proving what they do works.
Excellent. Terrific start. Stuart's made a lot of adjustments to his calendar to ring fence being with us today. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Please let's appreciate Stuart's coming.
Thank you.